Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the PolicyMap Back to School webinar. My name is Betsy Minnick, and I work in outreach and business development at PolicyMap. We all really hope your new semester is off to a great start and that we can help you to make the most of your access to PolicyMap. This is a GoToWebinar format, so everyone will remain muted during the session. However, if you would like to ask a question, you can either raise your hand using the control panel so that you can be unmuted, or if you have a mic, you can simply type in if you don't have a mic, you can simply type in your question in the control panel and it will show up on just our screen. Today, you'll be hearing from Elizabeth Nash, PolicyMap's Chief Data Officer, Phil Vu, who is PolicyMap's Chief Customer Success Officer, and I will follow up talking about some specific trends and curriculum that we're seeing from our academic subscribers. The agenda today is that Phil will kick off and show us a little bit more about the platform and some of the updates to current features. Elizabeth is going to share information about new and updated data and probably even some nice announcements about forthcoming data. And then again, I will talk to you about some curriculum themes and applications and how to access support from the PolicyMap team. And finally, we really want to leave time at the end for your questions and answers. And this session, as we mentioned, will be recorded. So we will be able to share it with you after, and you will be able to share it with your colleagues. So Phil, I'm going to turn over to you.
Thanks, Betsy.
You're welcome.
Share my screen. So I will show us some of the new features of PolicyMap. I don't want to go through the basics. If you ever just want to learn about PolicyMap, please join us on our free weekly webinars that we host that just covers the really basics of PolicyMap, but we go into some very useful details about the features itself. Today, we want to show you some of the more advanced features really available for our academic users and how they would use the tool. And probably one of the most requested features is the ability to download all this data that's in PolicyMap into your own study or your own work that you're working on. And there's two unique ways to get to the download in PolicyMap. And the first is really what we call the modal. And there's this little button in the very top right-hand corner. And what the modal does is basically sit right on top of the map. And the goal of the modal for users is to say, I'm coming here just to download data. You don't want to interact with the data on the map itself. You're going to go here and start just searching for data that you want to download. And the process is really simple. As you can see, it's 1, 2, 3. It's a matter of choosing the data that you want to download in step 1, choose the area that you want to download in step 2, and then confirm how that data is going to be delivered to you in step 3. So if you're familiar with PolicyMap, you'll find out that we have two types of data in the tool. Layer data for us is data that's aggregated. So that means that if you are downloading this data, you're downloading data at geographies like cities and counties and zip codes and such. Whereas point data sets is address level data. So when you download this, you're going to download addresses for a given area. And then the last one we'll show you, one of our favorite features is the ability to join these two things together and actually download points and layers together. So in step 1, let's say we want to download something really simple. We can say something like we're going to download insurance information. We want to find out how many people maybe do not have insurance in a given area. But as you can see from the search function, it can be any variable you're looking for. If it's something simple like income, you can find data that's related to income. If you're looking for persons under 18, you can also find all the different variables related to that. So the data search is really quick and easy to get to data, but for us, we're going to take this and jump it right into downloading data for people without health insurance. Once you add the data, you have some options of what you want to download, be it the different years, and then more importantly, the variable, which is how the data is being presented. So right now, what we're going to download, if we select %, is the percentage of people that do not have health insurance. But let's say we want to get the number of people that don't have health insurance. So we'll change that to number. And then step 2, define the area you want to download for. It could be with a custom region that you made from the maps page. But for us, let's say we want to download data for the entire US. Once you have the area that you're going to download for, you get to choose the aggregation within that area. So in this case, the default is saying that we're going to get a list of every county in the entire US and the number of people without health insurance. But I can use this menu at any time and choose other geographies within the US, be it tracts, zip codes, cities, congressional districts, and even just state level. And then step 3, you get to choose how you want the data to be delivered to you and really what type of data you want to use. In the case of the option with metadata, what this is going to do is give you information about the fields that are in the file that you're going to download. And it really depends on how you want to use this. If you're a data person and you want to add this into a big database, you'll probably want to include a metadata file, so you're just getting just the data itself. But for us, we're going to look at the data together with the entire file itself. And then you have the option to either email it directly to you, or you can download it directly into the browser itself. We're going to email it to my account. So while you're waiting for this, you can continue this process and download another type of data if you wanted to, be it income data or any other variables as well. But in the end, what you'll get is a list of, for us, every county in the US. And then you'll see this is where the metadata of the files will be here. The second row is really how we describe the fields in our database, and the top is more a nicer way to describe that for users. So this is telling you the geography that we're downloading for, which is counties. This is the actual name of those counties. The GeoID are sometimes called the FIPS code for the area. So every boundary in the US has a FIPS code. And then more importantly, what we get here is the number of people that don't have health insurance for each county in the US. We have the year, the data where it comes from, which is the census, and then the boundary that we use, which is the entire US. And that's really how simple the initial file should download. So from this, let's say we want to download points data set now. So we'll go here and say, we'll download something simple like public schools. So we have public schools. There's no option really in this interface to do any changing of years and such, but we're going to change this boundary and we'll just choose something smaller like Pennsylvania. So what you'll see in the case of point data sets is that there's no geography or shade bias, we call it sometimes, because there's no, you're just simply downloading addresses. Now we're just saying, I just want all the addresses of public schools that are in the state of Pennsylvania. And again, this file will be downloaded to you. And then what you'll get then is a list of all the public schools in Pennsylvania. But as you can see from this file, it's not just public schools, it's actually all the details of our point data sets. So it's things like the type of schools, the status of the schools, the level that it covers, the individual grades, as well as all of the varying eligibility characteristics. So it's a complete data set for our point data when you do this download. And then the last feature, which is probably one of my favorite features, and that's the ability to join these two things together. So far what we've downloaded is data at a geography, which is at a county and such for people without health insurance, and we downloaded address data, which is public schools. But let's say we want to find out how many people are under 18 that live in a zip code that a school sits in. So here's our option for estimated percentage of people under 18. And so you'll see these are the two data sets together. So we're joining what we say point data sets of public schools to a layer data, which is under 18. And again, the default value for this is %, but we're going to change this to number. And then we can even do this for the entire US if we wanted to. So we'll change this to zip code. And now we're going to get a list of every public school, the zip code that the public school sits in, and the number of people that are under 18 in those zip codes. And what you'll get when you receive the file is this fantastic data set. From this point on, this is a list of every public school. In this case, I select the P in my query. The zip code that the public school sits in, the FIPS code, the formatted FIPS, but more importantly in this column here, this is the number of people that are under 18 in each one of these zip codes. So what we've done is we've joined two different types of data, which is an address data set to a boundary, and then to that boundary we gotten ourselves data. So one of the really unique features is the ability to really make new data sets by creating these two things together. And so that's really the straight function of the modal. And again, the goal of the modal is to be at a place where you're just coming to download the data itself. But if you're on the maps page, and let's say you're looking at data, you're working in some place like Philadelphia, and you wanted to download something similar, like something like income or so, you have the same options to download as well. And they're simply just in what we call the sidebar. And as you can see, when I click the download here, it opens the sidebar, and it's very similar to the modal, but it's a little more limited, but you can do the same functions. The difference is to change things like the years and the geographies, you do that in the legend. So in this case, if we wanted to get a different year, go back in time, we'll download data for 2000. And if we wanted to change this boundary to, let's say, block groups within the city of Philadelphia, it'll download now block group data. And the same concept with, change this year here, with addresses as well. So we would put hospital data on the map. Now we also have the ability to download hospitals or the two together, as well as the ability to send those two together on the tool. One of the most unique features with the download feature in PolicyMap that we're updating now is the ability to say, instead of just downloading everything that you have in this interface, maybe your goal is to find all of the census tracts that have income above 92,000. So if you select this filter in the legend, the download now will only download the handful of tracts that are above 92,000, and so you'll have that list. So the new download function allows you to combine what you select in the legend to also what you're downloading in the tool itself. Very unique features. All right, in the case of time, I won't really go too far, but let me know if there are any questions about the data that you have. There is a really good question about the data layer being able to download as a shapefile. There is not. The current download in PolicyMap does not download data. It mainly is just a CSV, but the boundary that's inside the CSV, let me just pull that for you real quick. This FIPS code, you should be able to join in a spatial tool like an ArcGIS or QGIS with the boundary itself, and you'll be able to recreate the layers in PolicyMap. The other thing I'll show you really quick is when you do print something in PolicyMap, we do have a new print function, and the benefit of this is that the current print, what you'll get is when you do select the print option, you have this very unique modal. The modal allows you to navigate within the window, zoom in and out, because what you get in this window is exactly what you're going to export. So on the right-hand side, you have some additional customizations, including changing the orientation in the area, the format, and then adding or removing titles and such. The new feature is that the download will appear in your session. As you can see from this little warning here, it's saying that this, you'll have a little alert on the very top when your print is ready, and that way it allows you to go and create another map and download again, and you'll just queue up those downloads and the alert will eventually appear for you to download. Those downloads will be available for up to 4 days in your session, and that way you can access it any time. All right, so the last thing I'll talk about is the ability to do what we call a multi-maps or multi-layer maps tool. And sometimes it's considered a spatial analytic because what happens is when you look at data in PolicyMap one layer at a time, what you see is the different ranges of that layer represented different colors. So in this case, this is income layer, and anything in the dark purple areas that are below. Here's my print, I apologize, but that's where it pops up. So in the case of a single layer map, we call it, it shows you multiple colors, and each color represents the different values that are being shown in the legend. But the single layer, as the name implies, is the ability to look at just one layer at a time. So if we were to go back to, let's say, uninsured population, the map basically flips and it does not present both uninsured and income. But if you wanted to combine those two things together, then you're going to use what we call the multi-layer maps. And the multi-layer maps, as it implies, is the ability to overlay multiple layers of data, up to 5 layers. But the difference, as you can see, is that multi-layer shows you one color. And that one color then is up to you to determine what that value is. So in the case of uninsured population, it starts at 0 and then maxes at 100%. And we can use the slider, left or right, or just entering our numbers ourselves, remembering that the left is greater than and the right side is less than. So we can say of this, let's find tracts that have greater than 9% of the persons with health insurance. So now instead of everything being purple, only the places in purple are census tracts that have at least 9% of the persons in here do not have health insurance. And so from this, we can add the next layer. We put income back on the map. And as we add the second layer, you'll see that the map is still colored in based on the first layer's constraint of 9%, at least 9% uninsured. And then for us, the second layer, which is household income, starts at 2,500, maxes at 250,000. And again, I have the ability to adjust these numbers. So I can bring this number down and say, we'll find out places that have maybe no more than 68,000. Whoops. And so now what we get are places that have at least 9% uninsured, no more than 50,000 in household incomes. So what we now get is the combination, or the intersection of these two layers. And then from this, we can add another one, and we'll do something really simple, like, are there under 30 workers? We're looking for millennials, maybe. And again, the third layer that we add, it's at 100%, but we're still contained within our first two layers of the multi-layer map. So maybe we're looking for a higher concentration of under 30 workers, so we'll bring this up to 25%. Oh gosh. And so now only places in purple meet all three criteria of uninsured population, income, and as well as under 30 workers. And you can continue this process with up to 5 layers. And the goal of this tool is to be able to identify places that you're trying to work in or understand based on a very specific set of criteria. And that criteria is data. And the neat feature of this multi-layer maps is that the initial query for these maps are what we call an AND function, which is the intersection of these 3 layers that we have on the map. And while the AND function is very helpful because it allows you to identify these places that you're working in, there are information around those areas that might just as be important. Whereas this place matches our under 30 uninsured, but doesn't match our income range, and so forth. And so we gave users the ability to change the query from what we call the AND function, which is the intersection of these data layers, to an OR function, which is the overlap of these layers. And what you'll get sometimes is a little scary message or map here, but what you'll see is still places that meet all 3 criteria, but sometimes just as important, places that meet just 2 criteria, or even no criteria at all. So users can toggle between the AND and the OR, and again, the goal of this is to give you the ability to, the AND function allows you to see just these places that you're working in, whereas the OR function allows you to better understand the overall community. And as with all things in PolicyMap, you can print this map, you can save it to share with other users, as well as sharing it within your work and study. There are lots of new features in PolicyMap. We wanted to cover just a handful that are really unique for academic users. The ability to download data we know is really important for our academic users. And then of course, the ability to do these fantastic spatial analysis was our other ones. If you do want to learn some of these features, Betsy will mention at the very end, but we do have a support page in the very top, which will highlight all of the underlying tools. With that, I will bring in our Elizabeth Nash to talk about data that's in the PolicyMap tool.
Thanks, Phil. Hey, great. I am excited to share some new data sets on PolicyMap and also to preview what's coming next. I'll focus on the data itself, and then my colleague Betsy will follow up by showing some examples of applications of using the data. layering information like Phil was showing also to draw out trends and insights. So as Phil showed you there, at PolicyMap, we organize our data by topic in these menus across the top so that faculty and students can find information related to that which they're studying, rather than having to know the exact source or the exact indicator that they're looking for. If you know the exact indicator that you're looking for, you can use the search bar as Phil was demonstrating. So this lends itself well to exploration, which is just one of the ways that PolicyMap's used in the classroom and for research. So a good way to explore our data is through these menus and then digging deeper into the neighborhood level by zooming in. So that's what I'm going to do today, while comparing neighborhood information to the larger area in which it sits, like the city or the county. And that's really easy to do in PolicyMap. You can then find out more about what the data is telling you by clicking in the legend and learning more about our sources and any steps that we've taken to enhance the data in our data dictionary. So I will start by talking about the CDC Places data, and that is located mainly in our Health tab. So just to take a step back, a few years ago, we created our own small area estimates of the CDC's behavioral risk factor surveillance system. And that data was used throughout the pandemic by very well-respected sources, like we found ourselves on the front page of the New York Times and a major article in the Washington Post with those data sets. But then the CDC released the Places data that we have now on PolicyMap, and we shifted over to that because the CDC has access to more granular underlying estimates than we could get. So these indicators are found, as I mentioned, in our Health tab, and they mostly rely in health conditions and also in the risk factors section. So some examples of these indicators include chronic conditions like diabetes and depression. Other risk factors include information like smoking or physical inactivity. So let me load one of these indicators just to give you a sense for how it works. So if we look at diabetes on the map, the Places data is now available for this at the census tract level, as well as the zip code, census and county. Many of these indicators are available for 2019, and others are available for 2018, depending on the year that the survey was administered. Moving on to another major update that we added. Clear out the map. So we have updated all of our ACS, or American Community Survey indicators, ranging from population to educational attainment to healthcare uninsurance, as Phil was showing you. And we've mapped these most recent data to the 2020 boundaries, and we've harmonized historic data to align with this current 2020 data so that you can visualize change over time, even if boundaries changed. So let's look at a very simple example of household income and zoom in to a place like my home city, Baltimore. And immediately what comes up here is a trend line showing you from 2000 to the current year what has happened in terms of median household income trends. If you dig deeper into the neighborhood, you can look at it at the census tract, and you can see how that information is trending, even if the boundaries changed. So you can click and get a similar trend chart there. You can also look at this in more detail in a trend chart. As such, adding benchmarks like the state and the US, so that then you can compare across years what's been going on in terms of how Baltimore shapes up compared to the nation. So this data is available all the way down to the block group level. And it's provided all the way then up to the state and the nation. If you want to find out more information about the source, as I was discussing earlier, you can click on the description here and then click through to the data dictionary. That brings you to the section that talks about everything you could ever want to know about what we included on PolicyMap, when we updated it, and what we did to the data, if anything. Go back here. In December, the census is going to release the ACS data in a totally new format. That's going to make a challenge for data users across the US, but we're working with their sample data now so that we're ready to provide it to our users as quickly as possible. And traditionally, we've been able to get that up by the beginning of the following year, or of the next year, so within about a month or so. Okay, so I'm going to take this off and talk next about our broadband and computer access by grade. So as a part of the data update for the American Community Survey, we added a few new indicators, as we always try to do. And some of those indicators involve broadband and computer access by grade. And those are available in our Quality of Life tab. With this data, you can see where school children had access to computers and internet during the COVID-19 lockdown. And for areas without computer and internet access, the students in those neighborhoods were and are likely at higher risk of pandemic-related setbacks. So if we look at elementary school children in Baltimore, actually I wanted to load on without computer and internet access, we can see areas where it's particularly pronounced. So for instance, in this census tract or in this one down here in West Baltimore, more than half of elementary school children didn't have access to a computer and internet. Moving on to another new data set. We added broadband data more generally at the block level to PolicyMap to our new platform. So I can show you how that works. This allows users to see broadband deserts from further out. So we're very excited about this new addition. So if we load on one of these, and this is from the FCC, again, clicking this will bring you to that data dictionary to provide more information about the source and any limitations that we know about from the source. We're very clear about that. So we can zoom in. Let's move into, in this example, to Camden, New Jersey. And as the map redraws, we can see here very clearly, very granular areas where there is no broadband availability in the city of Camden, where we know that people are living. So this is a really easy map to interpret. It's you either have it there or you don't, and you can see, where there may be people who need additional support in terms of this important resource. So we'll then move on to our new home sale data. This year we transitioned over to licensing proprietary home sale data from Black Knight. They are one of the gold standard data providers. They update the data quite regularly, and they provide it to us at the zip code level, which is more granular than we've been able to get in the past. So we can load on that data to show you, and I'll show you the quarterly. And zoom in to St. Louis this time. So we can see here zip code by zip code, what the median sales price is. We could also change to the percent change from the last quarter or the percent change from 4 quarters ago. You can then click on an area, and if the data is available, you can see trends across time. So how the housing market has shifted from beginning in 2008 until our current quarter. So if we go to, let's see, I think zip code 63117. Here we go. I believe we can see a full list, but see here you can see the spike that happened during the pandemic, and now sort of the cooling off of the market. So that's our new home sale data. I will now show you our park locations data, which we're pretty excited about also. Going back to Baltimore because I know parks there. So we partnered with the Trust for Public Land to provide park outlines, and this includes really crucial information like children that are served by parks. Let me bring this up. You can see the outlines of all the parks, and then you can filter them. So if you want to look at whether children are served, whether seniors are served by parks, whether low-income households are served by parks, you can filter out those parks. But I think the data set that Trust for Public Land that provided us, that's even more interesting than just the outlines of the parks, is the park priority areas that they determined. So I'm going to show you that. So these are areas where there are not parks, but where Trust for Public Land has determined that there is a great need for parks. And they've done that based on criteria such as people of color rank and average land surface temperature rank. So areas that are very hot and need cooling. We can show where those highest priority areas are. So we isolate here on the map. There are not parks here, but the Trust for Public Land is telling us we should really consider that parks should be introduced in this area. And the nice thing about these is these are polygon data sets, so they can also be overlaid with other data like incarceration rates or income to sort of validate what's there on the map. So I am going to then just go back to a blank map, and I want to talk about what's coming next to PolicyMap. So we have entered into another partnership agreement, and this one is with the University of Wisconsin's Center for Health Disparities Research, and that is to show their area deprivation index on PolicyMap. It will live in our health tab under risk factors, and it will include their national ranking. And that ranking is very low to very high, and it's at the block group level. This index it ranks neighborhoods on the basis of socioeconomic disadvantage, and that's based on income, education, employment, and housing quality. So areas with greater disadvantage are ranked higher. I can't show it to you yet because we're still working out the final ways that we're going to be able to show it, and we're working closely with the researchers there. Just to give you a reason why we're including this, research has shown that the area deprivation index correlates strongly with overall health. So this is going to give you a very, very easy way to understand health disparities in a given place at a neighborhood level. We're very excited to be able to provide this data to our users. And I just want to take the last minute of my time to mention that we're always looking for university partnerships on displaying data and using data. Advancing and amplifying the research that you all are doing. And we've entered into partnerships successfully in the past to do this, both University of Wisconsin, in this case, we've worked with Johns Hopkins during the pandemic and more universities across the US. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you have ideas about collaborations and ways that we could amplify the research that you're doing. I'm going to turn it over to Betsy, who's going to, I think, finish up.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was So great. Really enjoyed listening to both you and Phil. And I'd like to just take this next couple of minutes to talk about some of the themes and applications that we've seen from our university faculty members and librarians, and the questions that we're getting on a regular basis, and why there is generated interest in our platform and the data within the tool. One of the questions that does seem to come up from every university is the question of health equity and the data we have related to that. Data where, as Elizabeth showed, the new places data will allow users to identify problems all the way down to the neighborhood level. We are often asked about using our data related to social determinants of health. Extremely popular within nursing programs and social work programs where, and medical programs, where our faculty members and researchers and students are looking at data that are seeing how these specific factors are influencing the overall health or the expected health of a population. Especially within the past few years, we're looking at data related to racial and ethnic disparities, and we can talk a little bit about how there is data that has been disaggregated to show different data points or indicators by specific race or ethnic groups. We'll talk a little bit about environmental justice and understanding neighborhood trends. And of course, the one question that we often get to is what historical data do we have on PolicyMap? And one of the sources that we generally have data that's informing policy in the current time or from 2000 forward, but we do have the Hulk maps available as well, and I'll show you some examples of that. In the interest of time, because we're just trying to show you so much during this 1-hour webinar, I do want to let you know that if there are questions, if you have specific applications, if you feel that you'd like to dive deeper into any of these topics or themes, certainly set up a time to talk to us. And as Elizabeth mentioned, we do have a data team, and they are always out there cleaning, standardizing, and curating data. So if you have questions about what we have or don't have, it would be really great to hear from you. So here are just some of the data sets that are currently available. This is taken from a point in time over the past few years. So we have added new data since this was here. But here's just a really great customer story coming from one of our professors at the University of Maryland Medical School or School of Pharmacy. And Dr. Shaya did a study, and we have a really nice customer story within our customer stories that will show how she took our data and used it in their analysis to take a look at their insurance claims data that, of course, was anonymized, and they were able to take a look at medical risk factors and vaccination rates. So I encourage you to really take a close look at our customer stories and the newsletters. Now, when it comes to looking at this data, I know that Phil and Elizabeth just were able to walk you through the actual tool and show you how you can go in and really look at that data right down to the neighborhood level. I just wanted to show that this is something that comes up over and over as we talk to different clients who are working within population health or who are trying to show their students immediately how where you live really affects health. This map is one of the ones that comes up over and over again, and this is just life expectancy. And as you hover over different regions in and around a specific area on a map, you can see the great disparities that are there, and where, in fact, this small little census tract here in the southeast corner of Washington, D.C., the life expectancy is 63, and when you go up to the northwest corner of Washington, it's going to be 86. So really, really very simple, easy way for our faculty members and librarians to teach students about disparities. Some of the other data that we point to when incorporating this into the curriculum is, of course, using that the places data from the CDC to find areas where a specific chronic condition is more prevalent, be it diabetes, arthritis, high cholesterol, or where there are high levels of cancer incidence, and that's broken out by different age groups or races and ethnicities. There's a lot of data here also related to environmental hazards, and as Phil spoke to earlier, our students and teachers and faculty members can go in and layer that data. So they can look at areas where people are living in poverty and their proximity to contaminated sites, so brownfield, Superfund locations, where there might be areas that recently had a hurricane or a flood, lots and lots of climate change events happening, and being able to look at that on a map and take a look at the social and economic factors is really useful. I have one professor who's out at the University of Washington who actually takes a look at areas of natural disaster and looks at trends in social and economic factors over time after that disaster. Really, really fascinating use. Of course, another issue that comes up is access to healthy foods. We do have data on low access designations, the USDA, and limited supermarket access areas from where PolicyMap came from, the reinvestment fund. And being able to take a look at these LSA areas and their proximity to retail locations or farmers markets is really useful. And being able to filter that data to see whether or not it is a full service supermarket is also really, really great. So when it comes to social determinants of health, lots and lots of data types. And again, if you'd wanted to talk a little bit about this, or if you'd wanted to think about which professors might be trying to incorporate this into their curriculum, here's just some of the types of data that are available. The best place for you to go, however, is to our data directory. And we'll talk about all the support materials that we do have at the end. Here's just a really, really quick map of the broadband map. Elizabeth showed you just where there was access or not access. Here is a high-speed broadband map that's going to show you, in this case, block groups where the download speed is lower and doesn't meet the FCC's regulate or requirements. So you now might know that you have the ability to go in and change the colors on the map. You can invert the colors so you can make those different cut points pop on the map. And here's another interesting map. Just again, students should be able to quickly and easily jump in and use the tool to layer data on a map. In this case, we are looking at the percent of people under 18 living in poverty, and again, looking at the percent of students who are in 9th and 12th grade without computer access. So really, really figuring out those areas that might be a need, might have the need for wireless access or for lending of Chromebooks or computers. A way to, for a lot of our universities, some of their community engagement departments might think about using PolicyMap as a tool to work with their surrounding community and their community partners to see, areas of interest in and around their university or college. So there is quite a bit of data within PolicyMap that shows racial and ethnic disparities. Again, this is not a comprehensive list. I just thought I would show you some of the highlights, but you do have the ability to easily map an area to show the predominant race or ethnicity down to the census tract level. You can view foreign-born population and view the people in poverty by race or ethnicity. But some of the data that is not census or ACS data and that is unique to PolicyMap or exclusive is some of the data that comes from PolicyMap, and the Census and Opportunity Insights, which is a group from Harvard University where they have data on incarceration rates and upward mobility rates. If you do want more information about this, I would suggest you take a look at our data dictionary or get in touch with us. And then also a really important map, and I have a sample of, is mortgage loan denials by race, and that's data from PolicyMap and FFIEC, and then health data that's been broken out, infant mortality, cancer incidence, and health insurance coverage. Another common theme and application that we're seeing is data related to environmental justice. We have another professor who taught a class on environmental injustice, where he was looking at specific areas in and around a city where there are a larger number of people living in poverty. Here is the customer story. You can find it on our website. But Dr. Perez from the University of Delaware mapped, number one, where are the brownfields within the city of Wilmington, Delaware? And then he mapped poverty. What areas or census tracts in the city of Wilmington have the highest rates of poverty? And being able to layer that data, again, really allows his students to see and visualize these different areas that are more prone to health conditions or disease or chronic conditions because of these different environmental factors. Here's another example, or quite the same, where you can see areas in and around the city of Baltimore, and you can see where there's a larger number of households with a risk of lead exposure. And you can also see where there's a larger number of households that are Black or African American, where people are living in poverty, and then their proximity to brownfields and Superfund sites. So, really interesting, helpful, and a way to display this data. So I'm going to just quickly go through some of the other data sets that are here, because I really want to save time for you to ask us any specific questions that you have. But we talked a little bit already about the new home sale data from Black Knight, but there's also lots and lots of data related to housing costs and vacancy and the types of buildings that are there. This map in particular is going to be able to show you the percent change in median dollars of single family home sales. So this is really just showing areas on the map by zip code where the sale prices of the median sale price is up by 256% for the zip code. That's happens to be a really hot area within the city of Philadelphia right now. And then you can also see here that you can map data on homes that are likely to be affordable, and what areas in and around this area within Michigan where a four-person family earning 50% of AMI will be able to afford to live there within these communities. So it's really, really helpful. And then finally, we have lots of data that will allow your students and faculty members and researchers to see the lasting impacts of redlining. We also have a great blog post about this. If you haven't signed up for our newsletter or blog post, I highly recommend it so that you can share that within your academic community. But there's lots of data about, gentrification and the lasting effects of redlining. So if you take a look at this, we see a map where we're looking at the percent of home loan applications from Black applicants that was denied, and we can overlay that with these homeowners loan risk corporation maps and view that very quickly and easily on a map. But if you go back to the earlier map, you can also layer data related to the median home value, or you can take a look and see if there is an increase in educational attainment or lower educational attainment. And sometimes you can also see, an area that's been gentrified by looking at these different social and economic factors. And finally, I think one of my favorite parts of the new platform of PolicyMap is the ability to pull out this data, not only download it, but to pull out these really great trend charts and pull them into presentations and to be able to, look at data in different ways and benchmark that data. So I just wanted to pull this out and show you that you can export your trend charts and you could also download the data. So the most important thing, I think, is that if you don't remember everything we talked about today, we're here. You can always send us a message. info@policymap.com is a great email address. But we do twice weekly online trainings, and we have a really great support guide that's been updated that you can click to from the top of the map on the maps page. And there is a really wonderful new knowledge base with frequently asked questions that we've added as well. So if it happens to be 2 o'clock on a Sunday and you can't reach anyone at PolicyMap, that knowledge base might be the place for you to go. So as I talked about before, make sure you keep on top of things by subscribing to the newsletter, by taking a look at the blog articles, and also, if your students do have questions or your researchers about how to cite us, we do have a guide, a citation guide. And over on the right-hand side of this slide, this is a digital poster that is available within our support materials that you can download for your library to make sure that everybody's aware of the tool and that you're getting the most out of your subscription. So now it's time to hear from you and see if you have any questions. You can select the questions pane and let us know if you'd like to hear more. I'll mute myself so that we'll see who can jump in to answer any questions we might have.
Betsy, I've got a question from Roland on how the cost of PolicyMap is determined.
Oh, okay. So the price is based on your enrollment or FTE. And if anybody needs information, they can certainly just send a message to us and we can provide a custom quote.
And then Roland also had a question about, and this might be for Elizabeth, about current health information related to COVID, MRSA, and monkeypox.
Sure. So we are always looking for more health data at a more local level that is current. And at this time, we have COVID data at the county level that we have been sourcing from the New York Times since the very beginning of the pandemic. We also have vaccination data, COVID vaccination data from the CDC that we started sourcing as soon as they released it, again at the county level. So we welcome ideas for where to get data at a more local level, but at PolicyMap, we don't generally source data city by city or county by county in order to get the more granular information, and often it's not permitted to be used on our tool. That said, if you have a specific request, please follow up with us because I would love to learn. I'm always interested in new data sources for our tool.
That was a really good question about the old platform and the categories and some of the challenges of trying to figure out where data is at. We completely understood that, and that's probably one of the reasons why we added the data search menu. So if you're on the PolicyMap tool, just understand that the right-hand search is a geography search where you're trying to zoom the map or add a location to the map, whereas the search on the left is a keyword switch, which allows you to type in an address or data set. And that should get around the sometimes the confusion of figuring out where data is located at. We do show data in various categories depending on if they do cross categories, but we always suggest using the data search first.
Thanks, Phil. There's another question for Elizabeth on asking how robust is your data in southwestern states, specifically Arizona?
That's a great question, and it really depends on the data source. So our data is only as strong as what the source provides, but I will say that over the past 10 years or so, the coverage in those areas has increased. And we have also reconfigured our suppression rules, whereas previously we would not show a percent based on a certain criteria. Now we will show a percent based on another criteria. Happy to talk about that offline. But it has actually opened up a little bit more in terms of users being able to see more data in less populated areas. I will say that we have some customers in those areas that I think are really benefiting from PolicyMap. I think the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis's Center for Indian Country Development just signed on recently with PolicyMap. If that gives a sense for sort of our coverage of rural areas, I think they're going to be using our tool a lot for their work.
And I just want to answer one question that occurred during the download section of our presentation, which is the ability to download multiple years. It's coming, and we're really excited. So what you'll see today is a really updated, robust data download in the modal, and then eventually that modal is going to allow you to download multiple years, geographies, and even indicators in one go. So it's coming. It's a lot of it's just work that we're being worked on.
All right, I'm not sure if we have any more questions, but please feel free to reach out to us either via email or whatever way you'd like, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, and please feel free to share this recording with your colleagues if they have questions as well.
Do we have time, guys, for just one more quick screen share? We had a question from Ed about, he just wanted to see where the redlining data was located in the menu bar.
Okay.
If you want to, you can hand it over to me if you want, Betsy.
Okay. Let me see. I just need to figure out how to do that, Phil. Sorry.
Just right-click my name.
Oh, hold on a second. I'm sorry. Here we go. Gotcha.
No problem. So again, the two easiest ways is to either you can actually just type in the data search the Hulk. Unfortunately, we don't know them as that, but it's simply the homeowner's loan corporation risk map, or it will be under our lending category under historical lending boundaries. And so there's two ways to look at the data. There's just the actual boundaries itself. This is very helpful just to see how these boundaries exist, and you can start overlaying data layers like income and poverty and minority status. Or the other way that this data was produced was being able to see it as a layer itself. And the reason for this is that now you can use the multi-layer maps feature to see how the intersection of these layers intersect this at the same time. So two ways to use it, but they're both under lending, historical lending boundaries. And if we don't get to any questions in today's session, please understand we have your questions here. We'll follow up directly afterwards as well. So that way we'll be sure to answer any questions you have.
Thanks, Phil. That was great.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending our session. And please follow up any questions, and we're happy to answer them. Have a great day.
Thanks. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.